G'day Legends, Charles.
And Blake.
Are here for another video.
And today we're going to talk about fish to avoid for smaller tanks, such as a 60 centimetre or 2 foot.
It's so easy, even a kid can understand.
Let's jump straight into the video. Yeah. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it kind of goes without saying that things like Oscars, red-tail cats, and those like monster fish are obviously inappropriate for a 2 foot aquarium. So I'm not going to bother with those, but I am going to touch on some that are commonly put in 2 foot tanks and some that I often see in those sort of tanks. And I'll give you some alternatives to choose instead. So to get started, African cichlids. Obviously, they're full of color. They are a stunning fish, and people see them in a fish shop and pick up, something like 6 yellow labs, for example, and put them in a tank. Well, it's just not going to work because to sort of even out the aggression for things like mbuna, which include yellow labs, you need way more. You need rock work and stuff, and all that takes up real estate. So obviously a 2 foot aquarium becomes pretty cramped pretty quickly, and it's just not going to work. So if you do want some kind of cichlid, then I'd recommend a shell dweller, much smaller, much lower demand for space. They're pretty much just going to inhabit shells down the bottom of the aquarium. They're also going to be far smaller and far less aggressive, but you are going to have to sacrifice a bit of color to do that. However, I personally lean towards Tanganyikans anyway, so maybe I'm a little bit biased in that one. Angelfish are another one that I always see in 2 foot aquariums. However, they just get way too tall, and most of the time 2 foot aquariums are about 38 centimeters tall or just over a foot tall. It's just not really fair on angels, especially once you put substrate in and other things that are gonna really restrict the height of aquariums. So I'd recommend a nice tall, at least 18-inch tank for an angelfish. If it's something with personality and pizzazz and a real centerpiece that you are after for that tank, I think something like a nice long fin platinum betta could be a really great statement without the negative consequences of aggression and limiting their ability to grow tall. The tank behind me provided a great segue into these guys because I often see swordtails picked up for 2 foot aquariums too, but in reality they grow much larger than platies, which work far better. Swordtails really are quite a big fish, but I think people often just see them as a platy with a slightly longer tail, but realistically they get much, much bigger. Even platies kind of push it to the limits really, especially once they start breeding. So another alternative just over here could be, where are they? I know there's a bunch in here. One of these peacock gudgeons here. Now they're gonna show great coloration and be a similar size to a platy without necessarily crowding the tank over time with inevitable fry. You can see male right there and female right there. So great, great little fish and plenty of color and personality. Next one, I'm going to kind of just round in a lot of the Central and South American cichlids that are often put in 2 foot aquariums. Talking about like firemouths, convicts, even some Jack Dempseys and things like that. I will see it all the time, and I can understand it because they are cool fish in their own right, but certainly they're going to outgrow a tank like that. And most of them are pretty prone to some pretty crazy aggression when breeding. So that's going to be a pretty bad idea. However, something like potentially a German blue ram or a keyhole cichlid could give you that cichlid attitude without all the negative consequences, and they're just going to be a bit more of a compact size, so they could provide to be a better option than those other ones. It's a little bit crazy to me that these guys aren't sort of part of that precursor I gave at the start of the video about being giant, but I do see clown loaches in 2 foot aquariums from time to time, which is pretty crazy. They are a much slower growing fish than Oscars, however, inevitably they get absolutely huge. And even though they're available at big box stores and often come in really, really small, these guys here are only about 1 or 2 years old and already would far outgrow that of a 2 foot aquarium. So there are some smaller loach options if you're looking for a snail cleanup or something like that. Something like a dwarf chain loach I think would work really great. Yo-yo loaches are another one to avoid. However, coolie loaches could be a great option if you're not creeped out by them. They do look a bit weird in my opinion. Now, obviously, a lot of us grew up with goldfish in tanks much smaller than a 2-foot aquarium. Typically an unheated bowl with rainbow clown vomit gravel in the bottom of it. And then we were inevitably surprised when our favorite fish, Fido, kicked the bucket and was upside down a week later. However, you know, there are some great options alternative to goldfish. If the heater is the problem and you've got a 2-foot aquarium, a nice little school of white cloud mountain minnows could be a great option. Or if you really want that red coloration, then potentially you could pick up some red tuxedo guppies. A little trio of those guys could work pretty well, but definitely have backup plans for when the fry do start coming. Although, you know, that could last a good while if you start off with a trio or a pair. I would, however, avoid mollies because they do get quite big, similar to swordtails. So something like these blonde redline endlers will be a great alternative if mollies is your angle. But these guys are just going to be much more compact. Even, to be honest, they're probably a good option to substitute for the red tuxedo guppies I just mentioned. Plenty of really cool endlers out there, and I've started to get a bit of a collection here. You can see some Japanese blues there as well, which are a great option too. Barbs are often one that are included for 2-foot aquariums. You can see this big ruby barb at the front, or there's some 5-banded barbs there in the back. But tiger barbs can also be thrown into the equation on this one. And inside a 2-foot aquarium, I think they're just gonna be a little bit too big, a little bit too boisterous. I mean, the banded barbs might be okay, they're a bit smaller, but at least the tiger and ruby barbs are gonna be a bit too big. And I'd also include the other barbs in that, things like torpedo barbs, mascara barbs, and those other sort of larger ones. That's where something like an ember tetra, I think, comes in pretty handy. They're nice, vibrant orange color. They get along really well with a planted aquarium. We'll show you even better coloration. Pretty compact still, very peaceful, and you can keep them in all sorts of size groups, 6 to 10 to probably not more than that in a 2-foot aquarium, but in any case, they're going to readily take to most foods and all that sort of stuff, and overall they're just a joy. Actually, this could be a good substitution for goldfish too, since they sort of have that gold color. Another one that might be a little bit niche, but I have personally seen it 2 or 3 times in local fish stores, people picking up axolotls along with their 2-foot or smaller aquariums. It's a big no-no. I've got axolotls down there and they do huge excrements. It's an absolute bomb site in there whenever they go to the toilet. So definitely avoid that in a 2-foot aquarium. But if you do want something a little bit cool that's going to hang out down the bottom of your tank, something like these Hoplo cats might be a good option. I've got 6 of them in here. I think that's absolutely at the maximum of what you would want to do. And I'd probably even have a backup plan for when they do get to full size, but they could work for now. But something a bit safer even could be something like a pygmy cat or a stir-by cory or some other type of corridors, I think. Especially something like maybe a panda cory, one of the smaller cories would be a great option instead. So there you go, guys. That is my simple swaps for fish to avoid disaster in your 2-foot aquarium. Hopefully it has helped you. Obviously it's non-exhaustive and there's heaps and heaps of fish that are just not suited to that size aquarium. Size up if you can, but if you are limited, then there's still heaps of great options out there. And I didn't even mention things like shrimp, CPDs and emerald rasboras, which are some of my favorite things in the hobby, pea puffers as well. So we could go on all day, but I want to keep it short and sharp and entertaining. So if the video has helped you, it always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe and all that fun stuff. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.